my Google Slides. And so we're going to learn today how to create secure Google Meets for online meetings, office hours, and I'll explain the OTPT and speech sessions in a few moments. So they're going to start off with the why, okay? Why are we at this stage right now, moving into phase 3? Why have we chosen to go asynchronous as opposed to synchronous online learning? So I'm going to start with that. One of the things that we've been very careful of as a district is looking at what our staff needs are, as well as what our student needs are, and the families that support all of our staff and students. And we know that in these really uncertain times, it's very difficult for families and even us individually sometimes, as well as our students, to come up with a consistent schedule. We believe that there is a significant number of students that would not be able to do online learning period by period all day long. And we really wanted to make sure that we were offering learning experiences that everyone can access at any time. So we are very proud of all of you that you've moved in this direction so seamlessly, and we're really thankful. And from most of the feedback that we've received from parents is positive that we've gone in this direction. There are a couple that wish that their kids were on a synchronous schedule with live learning, but we're confident in this decision. So we've asked you to create videos, to instruct students, or to find videos that are already out there on the web, and you've done a great job doing that and creating lessons that are meaningful for students, but also realistic for them to be able to do on their own at home. So we are moving into phase 3, where we will begin to think about offering synchronous online meetings and office hours only. Okay, so we're still not going into that live learning, but we're going to offer opportunities for teachers and students to connect with one another, to ask questions about the learning that's posted in your Google Classrooms or in the templates on our website, and also to really just make sure that to check in and to just kind of have that human contact through a meeting or an office hour. So that being said, we have the technology team has been very careful about looking at what types of technology tools we are going to offer to our staff members. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we're offering things that are sustainable. So we don't want to, even though there are a lot of companies right now that are offering, something for free for an extended period of time. Eventually those tools are going to become, something that's going to require a fee. And we want to make sure that we're using things that have been tested by the technology team from our perspective as educators, but also from the students' perspective, and that are available on your devices, but also on student devices. We want you to learn things that you can take and then use and transfer that knowledge back to your students, so that we're all, consistent in what we're learning. So the technology team, we had been looking into a couple of different options for these online meetings and office hours. So we were looking into various different things, but we tested with Zoom and also Google Meets. So every morning since this started at 10 o'clock and also at 1:30, and most of the time in between, the technology team was on either a Hangout or a Zoom session to conduct our meetings and to try to collaborate and continue business. So we also, in not just testing it ourselves, but we've been looking through the forums and doing research on all of the options that were out there, and really learned a lot from the districts that had decided to go with synchronous learning right out of the gate. And they ran into a lot of challenges, and we'll talk about those a little bit. We had some concerns with privacy and also the security of these online meetings. So we wanted to wait until we were sure that the technology caught up to what our expectations are to make sure that our staff and our students are safe in these online environments. So we tested with Zoom. After looking at all of the data that's out there, New York City decided to ban that for their public schools. And so we are not going to use that. We're selecting Google Classroom and Google Meet as our only form of online virtual meetings, and that's the platform that we'll use. And I'll explain to you why those two in combination are so important. The other aspect of this is the other reason why we waited to until phase 3 to implement this is because even though parents and students had signed the Google Apps for Education and Chromebook agreement in the beginning of the year, we still think that it's important for families to have the option to opt in to Google Meets or opt out. So I've been sending out surveys to students only for the past couple of weeks through School Messenger. I'm going to, after this meeting, send out our 5th survey. And that survey is asking parents to opt their students in or opt out. Right now, when I checked last night, we currently have 1,214 students who have opted in, 76 who have opted out, and over 1,000 that haven't opted either way, haven't responded. So I will be sending out the next survey, and this time the survey is going to have a hard stop date. So we're going to say that anyone that has not responded by the end of this next round of, we're going to do 2 more rounds. Anybody that hasn't responded by Monday is going to be considered opt-in. Then, once we have all of that data, we're going to separate those lists by grade level and then send them out to each school so that you know who is on that opt-out list. Now, I, had been a classroom teacher for a number of years before entering into the ever-changing and exciting world of technology. And if it was me at this point in time, with my students, I would reach out to anyone in my class that's on the opt-out list and just explain to those parents how I intend to use the office hours or the morning meetings through Google Meets, just so that they understand. They may not have read the entire email, because we know that happens to all of us, especially when people get overwhelmed. And I think a lot of people are feeling that right now, especially parents too, and especially parents with multiple kids. And so we just want to make sure that I would reach out to them and say, look, this is how I'm going to use it. Maybe they're not aware of how it will be used and they're just, fearful of it. So they just said no right off the bat. So I would encourage you to please reach out to any students that are on that opt-out list once you receive it next week, and try to encourage those parents to opt their students in. The timeline for implementation, we are looking, I believe that the high school said that starting May 4th, we will go forward with offering the online meetings as well as the office hours. So everybody can pretty much decide over the course of the next couple of next week what your guidelines will look like. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Also, on the side of the timeline for implementation, we want you to be aware that OT, PT, and speech have started Google Meet services, teleservices yesterday. Now, it's a law that was signed in by the governor a couple of weeks ago, and that requires us to be able to offer these services for OT, PT, and speech only. So those are the only 3 areas right now where any teacher is doing any type of an online synchronous learning experience. That's because it's a law and it's required. So if you are not an OT, PT, or speech teacher and they had a separate training with our team on Monday, you will not be using it for live learning, just for meetings and office hours. Okay, now let's take a look at the student and staff safety guidelines. So I'm going to pop over to this. There is a link directly to this document within your within the slides that I will share out with you later. Whoops, did not. I pressed the wrong key. My apologies. Okay, I just wanted to try to make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, so again, we are only using it for office hours, small group or class meetings, not synchronous live classes. I want you to read the guidelines below, and then there's a form. So you want to click here to complete that form, indicating that you've read this and considered all of these aspects before moving forward with an online meeting or online Google Meet. So here's where I want you to really start to think over the next couple of days about what this Google Meet experience will look like for you and your students. So just like the district does not tell you exactly what your individual classroom rules should be, we are not, we only have some non-negotiables that we'll discuss here today. But in this area here, these are the things that you'll want to consider. What's going to be most comfortable for you? Just like, some teachers are okay with, that the like a collaborative classroom where students are kind of like calling out and sharing their ideas. And then other teachers really want the structure of raising your hand. Those are things that you're going to need to bring to your individual classrooms based on what you're comfortable with and what your style of teaching is. So these are some things to consider. And then on page 2, I'll show you in a moment, there's a sample A teacher and a sample B teacher of what some of their guidelines are. So you can get an idea of what you might want to create for your class as well. So think about it. Will you want students to be on video and share their videos so that you can see them? Or do you want audio only and you're going to ask them to have their cameras turned off? How will you allow students to talk during the meeting? Do you want everyone muted when they come in? And Tyler will show you later on how to mute students yourself. How will you call on students? And we'll also show you an extension that's been pushed out to staff and students so that they can raise their hands. And Tyler will demonstrate that later as well. So you're going to consider the rules that need to be in place before your first meeting. And like anything else, those things are fluid and can change as you learn more about what this process looks like for you. One thing that we really want to make sure of is that your background is free of distractions. Please do not have a TV on in the background. We've all seen these late night talk shows and things that show clips of, kind of like these online meetings gone wrong where something's happening in the background that can be, either inappropriate or, just distracting for students. So we want to be mindful of those things. It does say a plain background is best, but as you can see, I have my plants behind me. Although they're growing, they're not really moving. So they're not going to be hopefully too distracting to my students. Be aware that your meeting can be listened to by others in the student's home. So you want to conduct every single meeting as if the parent is sitting right there listening to everything in the conversation. Depending on students' homes, we can't be sure that they are going to have a safe space where they're just by themselves or that they'll have their earbuds in. So just be mindful of that. We are bound to FERPA rules and regulations about recording online meetings. So please know that while we are recording this meeting now because it's professional development with staff, there will be no recorded sessions of students now or moving forward. Okay, so we're only recording online PD so that we can share that out with our staff later who can't attend. If a student is unable to attend an online meeting and they miss something that you went over that you think is important, please find another way to relay that information to them. Again, we're going to send you the opt-out information. And if students are signing into your Google Meet when they are on the opt-out list, you will need to remove them from that session, and Tyler will demonstrate how to do that later. Another thing to be mindful of is you don't want to share your screen if you have windows open that are not related to class. So for example, is it okay for you to use your district issued MacBook to watch a movie on Netflix? Absolutely, not a problem. Is it okay for you to put in a ShopRite order so that you can go pick it up and that you're not exposed? Absolutely, no problem. Those things are absolutely fine, but we wouldn't want those tabs to be open when we're conducting an online meeting. Number one, you want as little distraction as possible on your desktop. So as I'm saying this, I'm going to take these extra files here and move them over so that I am practicing what I'm preaching right now. But also you just want to make sure that, so there's not distractions, but also that you're not sharing anything that's not related to the class. Plus, the more tabs you have open and the more applications you have open on your computer, the slower your performance in your browser will be. So you may experience a delay or a lag or something like that. So it's always a good idea to completely restart your browser. So if I was going to do that right now, which I will not, if I want to restart my browser, I can't just close this X here. Okay, that does not close the browser. I either have to go to Chrome and scroll down to quit Chrome, or I can hold down Command Q and quit and then open it back up again. It's always a good idea to try to do that before you enter a Google Meet, because that will help your performance as far as internet speed. The other thing that you want to be mindful of is that there may be technical difficulties that students have where their network drops out, or they leave the class unexpectedly. So just know that these things are going to happen, and be aware of how you want to address those things. This one is really important, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of moments. We do not want to share these meeting IDs publicly, because there's a very specific set of steps that we have to take to ensure that you have a safe, contained environment for your Google Meet with students. So I will explain that in a little bit. I already went over not recording sessions, and it does say to make sure to notify students that they are not to record sessions. Now, as the technology department, we've gone into our settings for all of Google district-wide, and we've disabled the ability for students to do what I did earlier and start recording the session. So students do not have the ability to do that. That being said, I could sit here right now as a student and use my cell phone to record this, and you might not even be able to see it. So just know that those things are, there are other ways to do recordings, even though we've turned that off. So please just notify them that they're not allowed to record any of the sessions. And also, of course, remind them that the code of conduct, HIB rules, and all of that still apply, even though we're in an online environment. When you have looked at this, you're going to click here to sign off that you've read the agreement. And as I mentioned before, here are the sample student guidelines for teacher A and teacher B of just a couple of best practices for you to consider about how you want your students to engage during these online meetings. Okay, so I'm going to pop back over here real quick and talk to you guys a little bit about the difference about how we're going to set up these online meets through Google Classroom and why. So the way we send out our meetings, our Google Meets to staff members, we do it one of two ways, okay? And neither of these ways are good for you to use with students. Okay, number one, we add a link into our Google Calendar and then invite into staff members to a particular meeting, okay? That works fine for adults, not for kids. The other way we do it is like we did in the PD catalog, that you selected that link to get to this meeting today. So that is also not a good practice for students, because it does not allow your meet to be contained to just the students in your classroom. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we make sure that we have a successful online meeting experience? I'm going to walk you through the process now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through Google Classroom, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's already set up. And then I'm going to create a brand new classroom and show you how to set it up yourself. Okay. For those of you who already have Google Classroom, just bear with me as I go through this. For anyone that doesn't have a Google Classroom, there are directions to set up a Google Classroom, and I can walk you through that too. In addition, anyone that is a teacher from preschool through grade 2, and you most likely you don't already have a Google Classroom set up, or if you are a special subject area teacher on the elementary level and haven't set that up, I am going to offer a specific PD session sometime next week for you to discuss what this experience will look like with younger children. Because the way you set up your Google Classroom and the way you decide to do your morning meetings or afternoon meetings, whatever you decide to do, are going to look very different than it would for an upper elementary, middle, or high school teacher. Okay, so my very first step is I'm going to open up a new browser tab, and I'm going to go to classroom.google.com. Okay, this is bringing me into a tile view of all of the classrooms that I have set up. Okay, and you can see I have quite a few. So I'm going to click here and show you what this particular class looks like and how I set up the Meet link. So once I open up this class that I've already created, we can see that this is my class, the Mrs. Smith's class. So in this case, I was pretending that I'm an art teacher on the elementary level, and this is the homeroom teacher's name and the grade level, because I thought that in my mind that would be a helpful way for me to structure my naming convention for all of my classes so that I stay consistent. It's really important that you decide what's going to work for you, and then try that out and maintain consistency as you create your classrooms so that they're easy for you to find quickly. Now, each Google Classroom has a class code, and this works really great if we were actually in the classroom. If I was in the classroom and I was introducing my students to Google Classroom, I would tell them to go to classroom.google.com, and I would write this on the board, and they would type in the code and they'd have access to the room. That's not going to be really helpful right now in this online environment. So we're going to skip that, and you would invite students separately. And I will show you how to do that in a few minutes. What you will notice, and what I'm going to show you how to set up here, is to create a Meet link. And this is what students will go to each time you have a meeting. So let's say I have a meeting I'm going to have a meeting every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. with this class. Then I would tell my students to go to their Google Classroom and select this link every Wednesday at 10 a.m. moving forward in order for them to access the Google Meet. So I'm going to scroll over here to our settings and show you how to enable the Google Meet link. So when I click on settings, here are the class details of how I named my class. And just as I said before, it's important to maintain consistency. If for any reason you had to edit it because you felt like it wasn't working for you, you can totally do that just by highlighting it and adding in these different options. So you have an option for a description, a section, a room, and the subject. Okay. Now down here, scrolling down a little bit, you can enable Guardian summaries after students have accepted the invitation. I'll show you how you can add in parent email accounts, and they can get summaries of just the classwork and things like that over the course of the rest of the year. But this is what we want to do here. So this is that I've enabled this, and this is my Google Meet link. Okay. It's right now I have it visible to students. Now I have the option to turn it on or turn it off. So for those of you that already have a Google Classroom, we are at least a week away from implementing this. The go date is, as I said earlier, May 4th. So if I set up my classes now, let's say I'm going to set up a brand new class, then I may want to have this visible to students because they're not already going into my Google Classroom. If you feel, and I would just have to remember to turn this on or to turn it off. If you already have a Google Classroom, for our middle school and high school teachers, students might see that link and then start asking you, well, what is this link? And you might get bombarded with emails asking what it is. So you might choose to have this not visible to students until we're ready to go live with our meetings. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'm going to keep it visible to students. And I'm going to go through the process of creating a new classroom. So I'm going over here to get back to my home base by clicking on these 3 horizontal lines, and I'm going to click on classes. You can see this list here is a menu of all of the classes that I currently have within my Google Classroom. Now I'm going to create a brand new one. So I come up here to this plus sign, I click on that, and I'm going to choose Create Class. And here I put in my class name. Okay, so this is going to be my period 3 history, US history. Okay, and then I can leave everything else blank. I could have put the subject here. I'm just going to leave that like that right now, and then choose Create. And it takes a second or two for it to populate that class. Which gave me a second to have a sip of tea. Okay, so here you can see I have my period 3 US history. Class code is here. Again, we're not using that, but there's no Meet link, okay, because I didn't create that yet. So I'm going to go through the process of just showing you how to add people and add people by clicking on people. And then you have the option to add teachers and students. So if I am, let's say I have a co-teaching experience and I want to add my co-teacher. I'm going to make believe that Tyler is my co-teacher. I just type in the first, his first initial of his first name and first initial of his last name. And then it's going to start giving me anyone in my contact list with those initials. For students, you have to type in their graduation year, and then their first initial, and then their last name, and you'll see students populate. So I'm going to delete that because I don't want to invite the students as a teacher. Remember, we're inviting teachers right now, so I'm sorry if that was confusing. So here's just where you invite teachers. Now you can see that Tyler is grayed out and he's listed as invited, but you'll see as soon as Tyler gets the email invitation, so it automatically generated an email invitation to him. Once he clicks on that and joins the class, he is going to be, his name will be dark like mine, and that invited text will disappear. Now, I'm ready to invite my students. So I'm going to click here to choose Invite Students. And as I said earlier, you would start with the student's email with their graduation year. But we have a test student called M student that I'm going to add. And this is another student that we use to test with, VDV student, SMS student, and last but not least, SHS student. Okay, so now I've typed in my student emails. Those are the students that I'm inviting to this classroom. I select Invite. Okay, so now you can see, as I said before, Tyler has accepted this invitation, so he's no longer listed as invited here. And each of these students are grayed out because they're invited. So each of them would receive an email with a link to join my class. and then they would change from invited to just their name being dark and that being removed. So that's a good indication of who has checked their email and gotten that notification and joined your class and who has not. Okay, now that we've gone over how to add teachers and also students, we're going to come up here to our settings again, click on the gear symbol. And again, I can change the details if I needed to. And here is what it's going to look like for you to generate that Meet link. So I want to select this. And I'm going to leave this visible to students. Again, you can toggle it on and off. Just remember that if you toggle it off, you have to remember right before you are ready to go live to make that visible to students. And then I'm going to select Save. Okay, now I'm going to come back to the stream. That's the home base. That's where students will always see first. And now you can see that they have their Meet link here. So this is also, you'll also have the Meet link here, just like you're seeing it on my end from a teacher's side. So before I select that link, I also just want you to know, this is kind of like a fun little tip. You can select a theme. They're going to give you a generic theme, and whatever color this is, it's the links are always going to coordinate. But you can choose select theme and choose a subject area. And let's say that this happens to be what I want to choose for this particular class. I select the theme, and then it's going to just change. So it's just a fun little thing for you to do if you want to get creative. And it's also a nice way, it's a nice visual way when you go back to your tiles to just visually see the different colors and the different themes. It kind of helps me, because I'm very visual, stay organized. Okay, well, as organized as I can be. So now I'm going to click on this link, okay? So let's say, for example, now I'm ready to go. I have my meeting set up. I've notified my students that we are going to have a meet, and I'm ready to start it. So when I'm ready to start, I go into my Google Classroom. I click on this link. A new browser tab opens up with my Meet ready to go. Okay, so notice that I have a few tabs open, and it is a little laggy because we also have quite a few people on the Meet. So just be patient with it and roll with it as you go. So you'll see that this is always going to be the naming structure of the Meet, and it's specific to each Google Classroom you have. And now I will select Join Now in a moment, but I want to hand it off to Tyler to go over what it looks like from the student side, so that you can see what it looks like for a student that, since I have not started this meeting and I have not shared the link publicly, students cannot access it until I click Join Now. Okay, so he will demonstrate that. Tyler,
Melissa, can I ask a question?
Here.
Melissa, can I ask a question before we go?
Yeah.
When we do the meetings, are they going to be specific by period or by class? Like, would I do all law and ethics classes together, or am I going to do each specific period?
So that is a great question. And I think when we spoke with the leadership team at the high school yesterday, I believe they're developing a schedule for that's going to be for the building, so that your meetings won't overlap. So let's say, if you were to do all of your classes together that are under the same
like law and ethics, there's 80 kids.
There's 80 kids. Okay. 80 kids in a Google Hangout is going to be unmanageable. That's going to be really tough. And
right.
If you had 80 kids that they're your periods 1, 2, and 5, but then Steve is also doing his period 5 at the same, or his period 4 at the same time, we have to make sure that you're not doing a meeting at the same exact time, because we don't want students to have to choose, well, do I go to Mr. Tucker's or do I go to Mr. Schmeltz? So we want to, they're going to give you a schedule so that you can create your meetings so that those meetings don't overlap.
Okay.
And that will look different for each building. So each building is working on creating those schedules. So if you have suggestions, reach out to your principals to offer those suggestions as they work on creating a schedule for you.
Yeah, that's really a great question, especially because, now we're entering this, world of the unknown here. And, I like to do this when I take over and transition into the Google Meet side, how really interesting and incredible it is, the technology that we have available to us at this point. I always like to kind of, as I open up here, think about what this would have been like had this whole coronavirus thing taken place 5 or 10 years ago, where this technology wasn't necessarily as capable of taking care of a lot of these issues with meeting with students remotely. So it's pretty cool and amazing to see that we have these things available to us. So as Melissa had mentioned, when we go into our Google Meets, there's a few things we want to be aware of. First and most importantly is those Meet links are not active unless you are in there first. So that's first and foremost, and that's really important to be aware of, and that's why we're going this route. The calendar invite method and the class code method and the posting a link method, not the class code, the posting a link method, all of those links are active all the time, regardless of whether or not you're in the Meet. So this method, it actually turns the link off when you are not personally in the meeting first. So that's why we're going this route, and that's why it's important that you follow these particular steps. So as you saw, Melissa was ready to join our Google Class meeting. We mentioned a lot of these in our guidelines. These are really to protect you as well as our students and keep everyone safe in the environment here. So these are just a few things that you may want to consider every time you join a Google Meet. Check your background, make sure you got nothing that's really personally identifiable. You don't want to have like Post-it notes or calendars with appointments in it, pictures that you don't want people to see. Make sure everything's kind of clear, make sure your desktop is clear, make sure everything that you have open on your Mac is relevant to what you're teaching, things like that. We went over all these in those guidelines, but again, before I join my Meet, I'm going to go through this almost like a checklist and make sure that everything is good to go and when I get started. Again, we have those guidelines. Make sure we recommend for that first time you do this, that first meeting, you go over what the expectations are for your students. So create those guidelines that you want, that work for you, and then make sure you review those or post those for your students. And like I said, review those the first meeting that you have with them, just to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what those expectations are. So now I'm going to look at this from the student point of view. This is our M-Student Google Classroom account. And as Melissa said, she had invited me as a student to join the Period 3 U.S. History class. The student is going to receive that invitation a number of ways. One being if they go to classroom.google.com, it'll show up here and they'll have the join option. The other way they'll get it is they'll get an email and they can join it through the email as well. So I'm going to go ahead and join this class by clicking the join button here in the classroom interface. And now I'm in the class. And I have the ability to join this class link. Now, like I said, when I click this and I want to join, it's going to pop up and say, hey, wait a second, you can't join this video call because it's not started yet. So this is that security feature I was just talking about. So I can't join as a student until my teacher has started the Google Meet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my teacher side here. So now I'm logging into this as the teacher. And now if I go in and start the Meet first, then my student will be able to join after me. So what we're recommending you guys do is when you have a meeting scheduled, it's recommended that you go and join that meeting maybe 5 or 10 minutes before your scheduled meeting time, just so that you can get yourself in there and get yourself organized, and then it opens the link up for anyone else that joins after you. So the meeting is not live until you click Join Now. Now that meeting link is live, it's now active, and the students are able to join. When you first start the meeting, you're going to get a pop-up that says this. It says add others. So you can use this if you wanted to add people that are not in your Google Classroom right now. So maybe you want to add maybe you want to partner with another teacher that's not in your classroom. You can go ahead and click the add people button, and you can type in their name. Just know again that you have to do it while the meeting is active. So you can't like share them a link prior to the meeting starting. So this is only if you want, like I said, only if you want to add people that are outside your Google Classroom. There's really very few special use cases for this. So most of you are just going to close out of it and not worry about it, but know that that option is there. So now that I'm in the Google Meet, I just wait until my student decides to join the Meet. So I'm going to go ahead and join as a student. Okay. And I'm going to click join now. And we just saw M student has now joined the meeting. So let's take a look around the user interface here of Hangouts. You'll notice on the bottom here, this is kind of where all the controls are for the Meet. So what you can do is you have your mute button, you have your camera button. This turns your microphone on and off, your camera on and off, and then this obviously leaves the call. Down here, if we go to more options, let's say we're having students who are having issues, or you're having issues seeing or hearing things. What we're going to do is to address those issues, we're going to go into settings. And this is where you manage what microphone your device is using, what speakers you're sending sound out of, and what video, what camera the device is using. So you really shouldn't have to mess with anything in here. This is normally fairly, set up already. It pretty much takes care of all this for you. But if you're having issues, just know that you would go in here and take care of making sure that your microphone is set correctly, speakers and webcam are set correctly. But again, normally that takes care of it by itself. Now, the other thing that makes setting up Google Meets this way super important is it gives you as the teacher a lot more control over the class. So what you can do is if I go to these participants here, I can see all of the people that are in our class. And as a teacher, I have the ability to actually mute the student. So if I were to unmute them over here, and let's say there's a student that's talking or is causing feedback, and you might hear a little bit of feedback, if I unmute them here, I can actually click the mute button and from the teacher side, and it will mute them. I also have this option over here, this little 0 with the minus inside of it. That allows me to remove students from the classroom as well. Now, there's a few reasons why we might use this, behavior being one of them, but the more important one is at the end of a Google Meet session, it's super important that you, the teacher, are the last one to leave the meeting. So at the end of the Meet, you would tell all of your students, hey, please disconnect. If someone's not disconnecting, you can go over here and you can click on this button here, and that will remove them from the classroom. Again, it's important that the teacher is the last one to leave the Meet, and the reason for that is this will, when it detects that the teacher has left the room and there's no one else in the room, it will disable that link and shut it down. So that's really important, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. Some other things we can do in Google Meet. If we needed to share that meeting out again and we wanted that information, that's down in here. So we click the little meeting code here and we can share this out. Again, only some special use cases for that. So just be aware that that's down there. Captions are pretty cool. If you click the turn on captions button, then you'll actually start to see it print out and listen to each person that's talking and give closed captions. So that's a pretty cool feature that might be useful for some students. It's turned on individually, so if you turn it on, you'll see it. If a student has to turn it on for them to see it. We also have the Present Now button. Now, Google is continuing to update and change and make improvements to this platform. So just yesterday, this button was added. We have present your entire screen, present a window, and now a Chrome tab. If you do a Chrome tab, you can actually send sound over. So if you want to show a video, maybe on YouTube, you would open up a new tab, go to the YouTube video, and then you would click a Chrome tab, and then you would select the open tab to share the audio. If you just want to show your screen, you're not really worried about audio, we recommend you use the show your entire screen button. You click on this to select the screen, and then you can click share. This is the easiest way to do it because it's easy to keep track of, and it just means that anything you've got on your screen is going to be showed over the Google Meet. So it's a little bit easier to manage than the other two options. But again, if you want sound, then you want to do the tab option here. You'll notice up here in the top left-hand corner, you guys probably have it as well. We have the Nod extension installed, and we've pushed this out to all of the teachers and the students. And as long as you're using a Google Chrome web browser or a Google Chromebook or your MacBook with the Chrome browser, this extension will be here. And this allows you to kind of send little reactions. It allows students to raise their hand. And do things like that. It creates a little bit more control over, so that students don't have to like unmute themselves or anything like that. It allows them to kind of say, hey, wait, I got a question, without having to sit there and kind of hope that you look at the camera screen. We also have the grid view. Now, Google has rolled out a grid view of their own in here. It's still being worked on, I think. So if you do see that in there, know that it is there. It's being worked on. But we also have the grid view extension rolled out here as well. And this has been proven to work fairly well. We've tested this a lot. So for now, we would recommend you stick with this for now, and use that as your grid view. And this allows you to see all the students on the screen at one time. So that is the Google Meet interface. Now, if I want to end this meeting, remember I said it's important that the teacher is the last one to leave. So I'm going to go into these participants, and I'm going to make sure that M student is gone. So if I go in here and I click on the remove button, now M student is gone, and now I can close that meeting. And now that link is dead. It's no longer functioning. It's still in the Google Classroom. But again, a student can't join it unless you join back first. So that's pretty much the Google Meet interface. And I like to tell people, especially when we're talking about new stuff, to make sure that, don't be afraid of it. The first one is probably going to be rough, and that's okay, because everyone's learning it. The students are learning it. You're learning it. So just be mindful of that. But also, go ahead and join a Google Meet with yourself. You can totally do that. Go in and join a meet by yourself and just click around the interface. Click the different buttons. Make sure you understand how it behaves and how it works and what the different options are, so that when you're in a Google Meet with a class, you're comfortable with what all the buttons do and where all the features are. So don't be afraid of it. You're not going to break it. Google really is good about making sure everything is intuitive. So if you see a button and you think it does a certain thing, it probably does that thing because it's designed to look like it does a thing that it does. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition back over to Melissa, and we'll go over any questions that you may have. I think I've seen some that get posted in the chat. So good luck with everything.
Thank you, Tyler. We so appreciate you and your expertise. If everyone can give him a well done or a thumbs up just to show our appreciation. Great job, Tyler. So we have some questions that have come in, so I just want to address those real quick. So if you have additional questions, you can type them into the comments, or you can unmute yourself and then ask it live. So there are so many links there are links in the guidelines that take you to more links. It's a little overwhelming. So what I can do is I can share out. What I'm going to do right now is this. I'm going to go to this document, and I'm going to copy the link to the form. Okay. And I'm going to put it in the chat so that this way you can go directly to this link and complete the form because we've gone over the guidelines together. So if that helps you, that would be, that is right there for you to complete. So the grid view, yeah, we went over that, but I can just, I can share my screen and show it to you again. And the grid view is this icon right up here. And there are different options. So if you, as you can see my screen right now, every time I talk, I get this green border around where whoever's speaking. So I like that a lot, and I think that that would be really helpful for, oh, sorry, my screen just started sharing. Go back to my grid view. Okay, sorry about that. We were on a slight delay there. So here's the grid view. And you can see that when I talk, I'm lit up. And that's helpful because Tyler had demonstrated before when that student, when he unmuted that student and there was that feedback, you know, that like horrible, like scratchy noise in the background. That happens sometimes. So if I'm speaking and then I see that while my border is lit up and someone else's border is lit up, that's probably where the feedback is coming from. So then you can ask that student to mute themselves, or you can mute them. And you can include yourself in the grid. And there are many options there. Only show participants with video. And so those are a really helpful tool. I like this too because it's a great way for me to be able to check in with you. So as long as you have your video on, I could say, okay, if everyone understands, like give me a thumbs up, and then you guys give me a thumbs up and we move forward. So it's a nice way to see everybody at the same time. So please take advantage of that as well. Now, yeah, can you attach a doc camera to explain a problem live? Absolutely. And I'm glad that you asked that. If you have a doc cam at home, you can definitely use that. If not, Natalie did a great training on using your cell phone as a doc camera the other day, and that is that meeting link, I believe, was recorded and added to the PD catalog. But I'm sure she'd be happy to help you if you had specific questions about how to do that in case you missed it.
Now, the cool thing, Melissa, if I could jump in on that one, those document cameras show up to the computer like they're a webcam. So remember, I went into those settings to change that camera view. You can just go in there and select the document camera, and then that will be your camera that is sent over the Google Meet. So that's how you would do that if you wanted to set up a separate camera, and then you can just send that over that way.
The other, if you don't mind if I jump in on that one, also remember your doc camera comes up on your desktop. So if you just share your desktop, it'll show what's coming up on your document camera.
You can do it that way too. That also works.
One of the things that I had gone over in the webinar the other day, is if you want your doc camera and your face showing at the same time when you're sharing your screen, if you pop up like the photo booth app with your document camera screen, when you share your screen in Google Meet, they'll be able to see your face and what you're modeling on your desktop on the document camera. But that was in the webinar, and I'd be happy to help anyone.
Thank you, Natalie. So we are we're coming up on the hour, so I just want to go over a couple more things. Are there any other questions before we do a little summary and wrap up? Okay, as Tyler mentioned before, it is a great idea to go into one of these Google Meets by yourself, invite a colleague, Maybe invite a family member that is not super tech savvy and see how they interact with it. And that can kind of maybe give you an idea of what it might be like for our younger students that are not used to using this online platform. As I said earlier, this is going to look very different PS to grade 2 than it would from 3 to 12. So I will be offering a separate session if you choose to participate in that, because there are just a couple of there are a couple of differences in the way you can share that information out with your students. So for everyone else, 3 to 12, you're setting up your Google Classroom. You're going to create that that Google Meet link, and then you're going to join that meeting right before you're ready to start. Like Tyler said, maybe 5 minutes or so beforehand, and then you're going to go live with that meeting. For our younger students, we may consider emailing parents that meeting link, and that's the only time that we would do something like that. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, because I'll address that for you all separately next week. But please, just like anything else, I do say this in every PD that we do, in every conversation that we have, because I truly mean it. Be patient with yourselves. Be patient with your students. This is going to be new for a lot of us, and like anything else, things take time to practice, and things take time to learn. And you know, technology is awesome, and it can be it's really helpful right now, but it doesn't always run perfectly and smoothly. So if you have a meeting that happens to let's say your internet stalls or your browser quits, just hop right back into that meeting as soon as you're able to get back in. It's really important. We want to make sure that kids are not in that meeting without us. But if a technical difficulty like that happens, just try to get back into that meet right away. Remember, the really, really important thing is that you have to set it up through Google Classroom, and then you have to we have to make sure that you remove all students before you're done with the meeting. And then, as Tyler said before, that makes the link not active any longer. And you know, practice with your colleagues, practice with your families. That's totally okay. Think about the guidelines that you want to have for your class, for your class member, or for your classes, and start to create those, because we will be asking for those to be submitted along with your lesson plans prior to going live with any office hours or online Google Meet meetings. So I'm going to wrap up right now. Thank you all so much for being here and for participating. I really, really appreciate your willingness to learn this with us, and we appreciate everything that you're doing. We appreciate we really appreciate the challenges that this entire situation presents for all of us, for us as individuals, for our kids, for our families, for our students. So, just be patient, be kind to yourselves. And if you need additional support with this or any other tool, please reach out. Please submit a technology support request, and we will find a way to connect with you either individually or in small groups, just to make sure that we support you throughout this process. All right. Well, thank you all. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. I hope the sun comes out a little bit more. It seems like it's trying over here. And take care, everyone. And thank you, Tyler, for your excellent PD. All right. Thank you all. Stay well. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.